I think it's quite hard to do one without the other. I don't think it's actually possible to just learn a language and not at least take in some of the cultural aspect of it.
Yeah, I guess also as you study the language, you do in a way study the culture at the same time. For example, respect language, I think it's called in English. Obviously, you have to learn how to speak to different people according to your relationship with them. So I guess as you learn how to speak in that way, you also have to learn the relationships that are kind of, inherent to that. So
yeah, in English, it's an extremely egalitarian language. There's no that kind of hierarchical consciousness is not really present, but in Japanese it is very much present. So, you know, if you talk with someone and they're higher ranked and they're asking, should we go out for a drink? And you say, no, I don't want to. You just can't say that, right? Even though you could say it, and you could say it very politely, it's not something you'd culturally say. You need to understand the culture to be able to speak the language in a way for the Japanese people then to approve of you speaking the language properly. I don't think there's a way around that. Yeah, I mean, there's also there's sometimes you just say things because they're a bit more gratuitous. I think you'd kind of invite people over for a drink or for dinner and you say, shall we do it sometime? And if you don't make a definitive date, then you're not going to have it. It's more like a polite thing to do. But it's because the culture is about, they say Japanese people, they think with the stomach, or they say it's about creating good atmosphere, good harmony. And so a lot of you have TV shows that are all about food and really local foods, right? It's, like this one noodle shop in this tiny place. But then if you meet someone from that general area and you say, oh yeah, I heard, that one noodle shop, they'll be like, oh my God, yeah, you know so much about where I'm from. And so immediately have a basis from which to have a conversation, from which to have a relationship. And if you don't get that, then talking with Japanese people can be really frustrating because you're like, why are you talking about puppets in Germany? Because I'm from Germany and people always talk about puppets. And I'm like, I don't know puppets. Right? But, it's their way of, creating a good atmosphere and, getting along. I don't know, I think, because I started learning it quite early, when I was 15 and I moved to Japan, but I think there is no doubt it changes you because all of a sudden you have to, through studying the language, through learning about the culture, you have to question your own, in Japanese you'd say joshiki, you have to question your own common sense, right? So there's certain things that we think of as common sense, as for instance, this is a bit more abstract, but for instance, duality of body and mind, like the idea of the spirit and the body. But in Japan, those two things are much more linked. So we have all these concepts that we kind of accept as common sense in Europe and in America, but in Japan they're completely different, right? And so once you have to accept that, of course, you become you have that culture shock, that reverse culture shock. All of a sudden you become a much more, I guess, you don't take things at face value so much anymore.
I think it does definitely help you to see your own culture in a different way as well, and to be more critical about things that you might have taken for granted, perhaps, if you haven't had that experience, I guess.